Understanding the mechanics behind enemies' attacks can certainly be unclear. The damage each specific attack delivers is less important than the underlying situations that dictate the attacks each enemy performs. Why do we dodge? When do we block? When should we push or attack? We are presented with a variety of situations, but we have to quickly decide. There are fundamental mechanics in Darktide that are often obscured by the chaos around us. Attempting to discover the answer to one simple question has led me to see enemy behavior differently. That question: why do we play the game the way we do? Anyone who has played this game has had to go through the training level and Psychanium. These cover most of the mechanics of the game, but it's up to you to figure out what is best to use for each situation that is set before you. Perhaps, by the end of this, we will save you some time with trial and error. Dodging. The only thing I have to say about this is unbind your jump from your dodge. I use spacebar for dodge and alt for jump. When you're spamming dodge, you'll probably jump at some point and you'll get hit. The name of the game is keep your health. Crouching or sliding. I have the crouch key bound to a thumb button on my mouse. Sliding will give you iframes, even on the Ogren. Use it. Crouching can sometimes increase the accuracy of weapons, at least as indicated by the crosshairs. Blocking. If I'm not attacking during a dodge, I'm blocking during a dodge. Honestly, you can get a lot done with dodging and sliding. I have had high intensity 5s where I blocked 4 attacks. To me, it's a safety net for your dodge timing. Enemy placement. This is the view we see all the time. We're typically enthralled in quenching our thirst for combat, listening for sound cues from specials, and keeping an eye on the horizon for large units making their way through the fray or for shooters in the distance. Let's remove the shooters and the armored units. And, for the moment, pretend this game has no specials to be wary of. What do we see? I am surrounded, but only by 9 enemies. The rest are hanging around the outskirts. What happens when we kill 2? The 2 hanging around move in to take their place. Sometimes, the system that manages these units gets mixed up and more than should be allowed step in, and it doesn't always correct back to 9. Sometimes it does. When fully surrounded, out in the open, you can be attacked by a minimum of 9 regular units. There is some variation to the number depending on the enemy type, but we'll get into that shortly. From this vantage point, we can see much more clearly what is happening. Let's check one more perspective the Psychanium will allow. Against a wall, there are now only 5 spaces available for attackers. Sometimes this number will be 4, depending on the spacing of the units. This is one of the core gameplay mechanics that we, as players, tend to organically figure out. Or we're told that we should fight against a wall and we just obey. Reducing the number of units that are capable of attacking you is why fighting against a wall and shuffling along it is so important. When in the open, players tend to shuffle right to left to right to left over and over again. They're calling the horde, and they're also simulating wall combat. I don't have any footage of it, as the Psychanium has no corners, but fighting in a corner will reduce the number of attackers to 2 or 3 depending on spacing. Sounds better than 9, right? Note that this limitation on the number of slots around a character are the exact same for the Ogre. Ragers and Maulers can encircle you with a total of 8 units, and Crushers can encircle you with 5. May the Emperor have mercy on your soul if you're in either of these scenarios. Enemy attacks. Mutants have 1 attack. If it's successful, they have many more that follow. They will charge, and you need to dodge to the left or to the right. After the dodge, attack the mutant as much as possible, preferably in the head. For Poxhounds, just like mutants, you should dodge to the left or to the right while they pounce, but push while you do. Once they are past you, sprint and slide to get right on top of them before attacking. The vast majority of the time, this will net you a kill. They have a quick recovery time after their pounce, so if you start swinging too early, they will dodge back away from you fairly quickly. I've lost many Poxhounds due to premature attacks. It is also advantageous to use corners or crates to set an ambush. When they round corners, they tend to take them wide, so account for this. For Poxhounds, you have to strike hard and fast. Poxbursters sure do know how to enter a row. You need to push them as they spring at you to detonate. If their attack lands, you and any caught in their planet-sized blast area will be flung away from its epicenter, gaining corruption. Be aware that there are some weapon special attacks that will provide the same effect as a push on a Poxburster. An example of one that works is the Ogren Club. The slap will knock Poxbursters away no problem. An example of one that does not is the Combat Knife. That tiny punch does very, very little. Dragon Scab Flamers attacks can be dodged at a 45-degree angle as their tracking is sluggish. If you're looking to get up close and personal, be aware that as soon as you get near them, they will kick you. It is best to push attack for your first melee attack on them. Their goal, once approached, is to get away from you and shoot you again. Ogre and Scab Gunners, once firing, are very difficult to approach. It's either best to wait for them to reload before approaching, or take them out with ranged weapons. If you engage them in melee, they will essentially behave the same as the Flamers. They want to create space and shoot you some more. Dreg Gunners, on the other hand, don't have a shove like the Ogren and Scab variants. They stab you over and over and over with their bayonet until you are too far to hit. Then they will run. Bombers, once in the throwing animation, will throw a grenade to your current position. They tend to show up when you're in a tight spot, but if you're out in the open, you can run straight at them with no issue. They will kick you to create space and then run. If you are close to them when they deploy a grenade, they will throw it, then kick you to stun and slow you. You'll likely eat some fire if you don't block, dodge, or push them. If they're in the process of deploying a grenade when you kill them, they will drop a grenade as they die. It's a good idea to use push attacks and stay mobile when fighting them, as one hit from their fire will take all of your toughness away. The same applies to the Flamer units. Trappers' nets can be dodged at 90 or 45-degree angles. If they don't capture their target, they will run far away, reload, and return. Dreg and Scab Ragers will attack 4 times before they make the decision to attack again or close the distance with you. Once they are in the attack animation, with most weaponry, it's near impossible to stop them. Some special attacks, such as Combat Axe, Latrine Shovel, Chain Weapons, Cleavers, most Force Swords, and I'm sure there are others, can typically trivialize this combative flurry. If you aren't running a melee weapon that can interrupt the Rager's chain attack, it's best to wait until it is over, or take it out with ranged. Maulers used to be quite easy to stagger with light attacks from the Combat Axe. Special attacks or heavy attacks to the weak spots seem to be the way to go when dealing with them after their recent change in behavior. I don't know how they fare against other weaponry, but I know the Combat Axe made them quite trivial. You'll know soon enough if your weapon has enough stagger and penetration to interrupt them. You can always use light attack spam and dodge its attacks. Or, shoot them. The easiest way to deal with bulwarks is with high-powered ranged weapons like the plasma gun or bolter. If you're playing Psyker, use Brain Burst. Since the Brain Burst will open the bulwark shield, team members will typically finish it off once it's opened. If you are intent on going toe-to-toe in melee combat, dodge to the left as they attack while charging a heavy attack. Release it after your dodge. You can even move back to the right and hit the weak spot with no additional risk. You can land the heavy attack and dodge again to the left to get another shot in from the back of the bulwark. This is inconsistent, but more often than not, you will land a second melee attack. Crushers can be dodged fairly easily. They attack a lot like Maulers, though I can't recall if Maulers will kick you if you're too close. The one thing with Crushers that I struggle with is their running attack. It is very difficult, at least for me, to time the dodge. Creating too much space with melee-only enemies will trigger them to perform a running attack. This can add a bit of uncertainty in the timing of when their attack will land. Ranged units, if given enough space, will transition back to their ranged weapons. Positioning is everything. Snipers give a visual cue before firing. The moment you see this flash of light, the attack will be where you are, so dodge. You can dodge any direction to avoid the shot. Left or right are probably the most ingrained options. You can also run directly at them and slide under the shot to close the distance. If their shot lands, you'll be staggered, knocked back, and slowed for slightly less time than it takes for the sniper to shoot again. Dreg and Scab Stalkers behave just like the sniper. Their burst is in a single line and can be dodged easily after you see the flash. Scab Shooters, on the other hand, have a burst that tracks your movement. The only way I have found to avoid this damage, besides being in cover, is to slide during the dodge. Drag Shotgunners had the same visual cue, but it comes much more frequently than Stalkers and Shooters. Scab Shotgunners are a bit hit or miss in my testing. Sometimes they'll present a flash and sometimes not. In practice, I can get my timing down fairly well after taking a blast to the face. In game, I'm typically just dodging like mad while attempting to hit them with my ranged weapon. Plague Ogrins attack 3 different ways: a slam, a stomp, and a 3-hit combo. Get close, heavy attack the head, dodge back away from the slam. Rinse and repeat until you see the stomp or the 3-hit combo coming. For the stomp, dodge back again and then re-engage. For the 3-hit combo, dodge back while blocking. When it's done, re-engage. Beasts of Nurgle can be kited fairly easily. Its speed may surprise you sometimes if you get sloppy or distracted by an enemy. Goal here is hit the weak spot. If the beast is focused on you, your team should be behind the enemy shooting the weak spot. While you're in front and your kiting game is on point, take some shots at its head. If a teammate is swallowed by one, use some sort of explosive or the Skullbreaker's charge to make the beast spit them out. Do this as soon as possible, as they will receive a metric ton of corruption while in the belly of the beast. Demon hosts are nuts. They attack wildly and with great speed. They also give you a bunch of corruption for just being near them. On Malice and below, they will kill one team member, typically the person who disturbed it. On Heresy and Damnation, 2 will die. The best approach for dealing with them is to not. If they awake and attack, block, dodge, and circle around some obstruction if you can find one. The team will have to kill it. There are some folks who can solo them, but I'm not one. Assassination targets, currently, have one mechanic. They have a shield. You damage it to break it, then do some damage before it comes back. From what I've seen, this is a damage threshold and not a timer. You can do more damage beyond the threshold. Don't shoot the shield, as it does very little damage. Use melee. When the shield is popped, use your hardest hitting attacks, including ranged weaponry. Flame weapons, the Thunderhammer, the Bolter, and the Plasma Gun will all do some serious damage to monstrosities and assassination targets. Waterfalls. Enemies drop from a single location and stack up on the ground. It is best to not be under it. Enemies displace after dropping. However, there is a delay between hitting the ground and following the rules of spacing they're supposed to. If you're caught underneath one of these bad boys, it may be your end. I started a new character to garner a better understanding of what is required for each difficulty. During my trip down memory lane for this video, I decided to not dodge or block through as many difficulties as I could. I was mostly successful in this endeavor, but muscle memory kicked in every time I heard that whoosh sound from somewhere off screen. Sedition. This difficulty is an introduction to the game and what it has to offer. I played one round at level 1 and didn't dodge or block the entire time. It was W key and LMB all the way. No problemo. Uprising. This difficulty is very slightly more difficult than Sedition. It has more enemies who have more health, and there are more elites and specials. This is where you'll need to explore dodging and or utilizing the environment, such as corners, boxes, walls, and choke points to succeed. I played 2 games of Uprising. I was able to do so without actively dodging by using the environment to my advantage. Taking the fight around a corner can give you the space needed to attack effectively while minimizing damage taken. Malice. This difficulty is a big step up in challenge from Uprising. Your dodging will need to be fairly well integrated into your gameplay. If you're lower level, and therefore don't have great weapons and the feats to accompany them, you will also need to push more. This is also where you will need to learn, understand, and be listening for the sound cues for all specials and hordes. It's time to get more proactive than reactive to what the game is throwing at you. Heresy. The jump from Malice to Heresy feels about the same as the jump from Uprising to Malice. I personally spent too much time in Malice on my first character before making the jump to Heresy. Initially, making the jump, you may feel like you're the worst player in the world. I know I did. To succeed here, you should have a solidified understanding of all elites and specials and be able to deal with them without assistance. At this juncture, you should also be cognizant of coherency and be actively attempting to stay with the team. A good gauge for preparedness for pushing into Heresy is by fairly consistently beating Malice difficulty, and it also feels a bit boring or easy. Damnation. Not only does your dodge, block, slide, and push game need to require no thought, you will also need to be very familiar with the weapons you're wielding. You should also mostly understand how each of the 4 classes works and most or all of the weapons' purposes or functions. Staying with the team is quite important at this level of play. You should also know all of the maps pretty well and have a solid understanding of positioning and utilizing the environment to your advantage. There needs to be a good balance of horde, shooter, special, and armor management on your team if you're looking to consistently succeed. I would highly suggest, if you're so inclined, to install a mod that will allow you to toggle ranged weapons during mission lobbies. I'll leave a link in the description for the one I use. This is helpful so that you can swap weapons if you need to cover any of the things that your team doesn't already have. Within the idea of having a maximum number of spaces around you, depending on the enemy type, you must execute the most effective different types of attacks on all units you encounter in that moment, while also being free to move about to deal with specials and their varied attacks. Dodging, blocking, sliding, and pushing are how you are able to achieve these things effectively. This is why, at high levels of play, stamina and the preservation of it are so important. Simplistically, not being surrounded by enemies with no means to escape is precisely the only thing that matters. This game is rooted in resource management. Health, toughness, stamina, dodge count, ammo, and maintaining maximum coherency bonus are resources that are all maintained through one thing: positioning. Be sure to tag enemies that you are actively attacking or, in your opinion, pose the greatest threat to the group. Better yet, tag and engage the current greatest threat to your group until it's down. This game is pretty fair when it comes to the number of enemies one has to deal with individually. I have found myself fighting a crusher, and I see 2 incoming ragers who run right past me toward my teammates. In that scenario, I'm tagging one of the ragers and finishing off the crusher. There is so much to say about mindset in this game that I'm sure I've glossed over great strategies, tips, tricks, and hidden mechanics. If you know of anything that I've missed, please share it in the comments. On my channel, you'll find videos that delve a bit deeper. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. I try to create at least one video every 10 days or so. I am trying to create content for you that is not only substantive, but also provides as much value as possible during our time together. If you're looking to garner a deeper understanding of Darktide, click on this thumbnail. Thank you for your time, and perhaps I'll see you in game. With that, I'm out.